At the neighborhood public swimming pool, Manager McGrady is erecting notices to inform the community that the pool will be shut down for the holiday weekend. Among the many swimmers, Bree is having a great time, but she pauses to check her blood glucose levels. Before leaping back into the water, she ponders whether she should remove her diamond ring. Meanwhile, in the lost and found section, custodian Clara is attempting to pilfer money from the abandoned wallets when McGrady catches her in the act. He now regrets having praised her to her parole officer and decides to dismiss her, although she must complete today's shift. In the parking area, Bree's sister Jonna waits in her vehicle, contemplating whether to go in. After much deliberation, she chooses to stow her phone in the glove box and join her sister. Jonna, who previously went through rehab, and Bree haven't spent much time together lately, so Bree is thrilled they finally get to swim again. Initially, Jonna is in a foul mood due to her troubled home life and the children causing chaos at the pool, but Bree encourages her to relax and enjoy. The rest of the afternoon is delightful for the sisters, who revel in their time in the water until McGrady announces that it's time to leave. When Jonna remarks that the pool should be open until 7, McGrady explains they are closing early for the holiday weekend and advises her to learn to read. The sisters exit the pool, and while drying off, Bree remembers she wants to show Jonna her ring, but it's missing from her bag. With everyone else already gone, McGrady urges the sisters to hurry, but they disregard him. Jonna inspects the pool and spots the ring lodged in the metal grill, prompting Bree to dive in and retrieve it. She pulls with all her strength but fails to dislodge it, so Jonna jumps in to assist. At that moment, McGrady takes one last look at the pool area and, seeing it empty, begins closing up. The girls continue to struggle with the ring, and in the process, Jonna's hair gets caught, distracting them while the fiberglass cover slowly descends over the pool. By the time they surface, it's too late and they find themselves trapped. In a panic, the sisters cry for help as they pound on the pool cover, but sadly, McGrady has already departed. After some disagreement on how to escape, Jonna begins to feel nauseous and panics, convinced that McGrady left them here intentionally. Bree reassures her, and they swim to the center of the pool to attempt to push the cover up, but it's firmly constructed from fiberglass and won't yield. Bree's next strategy is to examine all the seals and edges for weak points, but they find nothing aside from a pair of swim trunks. Eventually, they realize there's a condensation hole in the cover, but that won't budge either, so Bree decides to remove the plastic cover from a hole in the pool wall. By breaking it, she creates a tool that can fit through the hole to try and saw it. While Bree works, Jonna continues to grumble, leading to an argument. Jonna can't believe Bree moved on while she was in rehab, and Bree accuses her of throwing the ring into the pool out of envy. An enraged Bree dives in and finally extracts the ring from the grill, while Jonna takes over the sawing, accidentally cutting her hand in the process. Bree returns and suggests that the grill might be heavy enough to break the fiberglass, but she lacks the strength to remove it herself. Jonna refuses to help, but before another argument ignites, they hear a sound. It's Bree's phone ringing with a call from her fiancé David, who leaves a voicemail stating he has a company dinner and will be home late. This means the sisters can't rely on him to notice their absence anytime soon. In desperation, Bree dives back in and tries to lift the grill, but it's futile. As hours drift by and night descends outside, the building's lights extinguish. Bree can hear her phone ringing with David's calls, while Jonna continues to complain, this time about her dislike for David. Jonna suddenly notices that Bree doesn't look well and asks what the problem is, prompting Bree to admit. While Jonna was in rehab, she was diagnosed with diabetes. He needs to shoot himself soon, or she may fall into a diabetic coma. Meanwhile, Clara returns to the building but is not working very hard to complete your tasks. Back to the sisters, they are now taking turns cutting opening. Jonna looks at the burn marks on Bree's arm and wants to know what really happened the day their father died because he doesn't remember anything. Bree tries to dodge the question, but she finally calls their father a monster and explains what happened. That night, their father returned home drunk and lit a cigarette before passing out. The cigarette fell on his pillow and caught fire, but he never shouted because he was so drunk he couldn't tell he was on fire. Bree tried, she woke him only to burn her hand. Just then, Clara enters the pool and hears Bree's phone ringing. As she approaches to steal it, she hears the girls screaming for help and he asks her a few questions to buy time to empty Bree's wallet. However, she stops herself when she noticed that the security cameras were on. Clara goes to the control room to turn off the cameras and bring the lights back. Then he goes back to the pool and asks Bree for the phone password. He claims he just wants to help. Bree gives her the number, but instead of calling the police, Clara starts playing David's messages. Jonna starts yelling insults at her, so she drops Clara. He teases and explains her situation. After a stint in prison, he has trouble finding a job and she really needs the money, so she saves the sisters when Bree gives her the pin to her ATM. Sisters, he refuses to play his game, so Clara turns off the lights and heat and threatens to let them freeze overnight. Bree, feeling desperate, tells her the pin and Clara leaves with it her purse. However, the heater won't turn back on, so the sisters try to huddle up to keep warm. Hours pass and Bree's body aches badly from the cold. Jonna decides she has to try to remove the grill and dive in, but she's too scared to even go near it. When he reemerges, he finds that Bree has fallen asleep, so he rushes to wake her up. Then Jonna, she admits that she couldn't even try and blames herself for the situation because she calls herself useless, but Bree assures her that she is fine. Jonna then goes back to cutting the hole with the shard, claiming it's the only thing keeping her warm. Bree insists that they should talk about their problems, so Jonna admits that she's seen monsters anywhere and that's why she tried to self-erase. To this day, she still feels like a monster is eating her, which represents her abuse dad carried her over. Jonna says their father's voice never left her mind. Suddenly, sisters, they are surprised by what appears in the hole, but it is only Clara. She is upset because Bree, he only has $80 in his bank account and starts yelling that there are no girls odd for having problems and not being owed any favors by the world. Then he confesses he can let them die there and goes to the control room. Opt for desperate measures. Jonna grinds a plastic shard against the pool wall before pretending to have a collapse. He cries as he apologizes to Clara and says he has something important to share. He speaks very quietly to make Clara come closer. As soon as he puts his ear to the hole, Jonna stabs her with a shard. Clara screams in pain and rushes to the bathroom to check her wound. Enraged, she decides to get revenge by going back to the control room and turning it on an automatic pool cleaning system that causes the girls to start choking on chlorine. As the sisters try to stay afloat, they try to block the jets with their hands and the swimsuit they found earlier, but the jets are too strong and push them back. Suddenly, Bree loses consciousness and begins to sink, so Jonna has to push her up and hold her until he wakes up. It's still hard to breathe and the girls tell Clara that she's killing them, which he finally gets Clara to realize that this is more than just a prank and shuts down the purification system. Afterwards, Clara asks Bree for the ring in exchange for their freedom. Ignoring Jonna's protests, Bree gives Clara the ring, but Clara won't let them out yet. He says he will when he is ready and the lights go out again. Moments later, the pool cover finally moves and Bree hears sirens outside. David bursts in to save her, but he doesn't see Jonna, so he thinks he must drown. Bree cries because she is too weak to save her, only to suddenly wake up and realizing it was all a dream. He then checks on his sister and finds that Jonna is considering using self-erasing plastic fragment. Luckily, Bree manages to talk her out of it and promises that he will always be there for her. The girls apologize to each other and hug each other. Meanwhile, Clara she tries to ring as Bree's phone keeps blowing up with David's messages. His last says she calls 911, so Clara goes back to the pool to end this deal. The nurses are faking it. Clara is right and it happened for a reason. She apologized for calling her a monster. Clara, he screams and goes to the control room to punch in the code, but it doesn't work. After being scared, she tells the nurses the bad news but refuses to call the police because she is afraid to go back to prison, explaining that it nearly killed her the first time. Clara gives up and leaves Bree's things on benches and leaves. The hours pass and Jonna swims to keep her up body active and warm. However, Bree is getting very weak and when Jonna comes to check on her, Bree he feels so giddy that he confesses. She always knew what their father had done to Jonna and what he was disgusted by it. She wanted to do something. The night of the fire, their dad he was awake and tried to move but Bree held him down so he would burn and the girls finally did to break free from his monstrous ways. Touched by this gesture, Jonna decides she needs to try harder his sister, so he lets her rest on the buoys and gets back to work on the grill. It has to surface and breathe, but after several failed attempts, Jonna gets an idea. He goes swimming, trucks from back in the day and wraps them around the grill grates, giving her a good pull and without hurting her hands. The grill slowly starts to move and after a lot of tugging Jonna, he finally takes it off and triumphantly brings it to the surface, only to find Bree unconscious. Jonna rushes to give her sister mouth to mouth and luckily manages to wake her up. After that, Jonna uses the grill to hit the fiberglass cover on the opening area and it soon begins to crack. It finally breaks. However, the resulting space is not very large, so Jonna gets hurt when inserting her arm to break the pieces and make a bigger hole. Next, Jonna has to pull Bree out because she's passed out again, and once they're finally out of the pool, she rushes over to Bree's bag to get at her medicine. He injects it into Bree's leg, and after a few terrifying seconds, nothing happens. Bree wakes up for good. Just then, Clara comes back and points a gun at them because she is afraid that the nurses will tell the police about her. Jonna shares some heartfelt words about Bree. It's the only thing she has in this world, and that's enough to make Clara lower her gun and return the ring to them. Then Jonna uses Bree's phone to call the police and tells Clara to leave before it arrives. Moments later, Bree wakes up on a stretcher. After paramedics checked her over, Jonna shows her that she got the ring and says that they finally killed the monster. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.